snack.
We just started.
No.
What snack do you want? Hi guys! I'm Maria.
And I'm Danny.
And we are going to be reviewing the book Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I believe that's her name. I didn't write it down.
That is her name.
So, I'm actually a really big fan of Ali Hazelwood. I love how she's very STEM focused. As STEM girlies, I like how,
I forgot.
like, I was in love with her book, Love Hypothesis. I thought it was really cute. I really liked the structure and how it was done. And so I was very surprised when she came out with the Bride book because it's a very different book for her. And so I was very excited, and I heard a lot of discourse about it on TikTok because everyone was talking about it and how surprising it was that there's certain elements to the story. So we read it, and this is our review of it.
So basically, Bride follows. What is our main character's name?
Misery.
Misery Larkin?
I don't know what her last name is.
Misery Lark. So it follows our main character, Misery Lark. She basically is getting married to a werewolf.
Yeah.
Spoiler, she's a vampire.
Yes.
And it just follows their story.
It's basically like, so to me, it was like advertised as this kind of like vampire werewolf love story, but it's basically a mystery. Like, I feel like that takes up a really big part of the book, and you see the characters come together as they solve a mystery. So to kind of go over the world that we're in, so you have three different types of people that are talked about: humans, werewolves, and vampires. And there's a lot of political strife between them, specifically between the werewolves and the vampires. The vampires have kind of this treaty or like peace with the humans where they send something that is called, oh my god, what was it called?
I don't remember. Collateral.
The collateral. And Misery, and so it's like usually a son or daughter of a high ranking human and vampire, and they send them into each other's lands. And basically it's like, if you want to start a war or anything, or to keep wars from starting, you have that collateral. And Misery was the collateral for the vampire. So she was sent into the human world like when she was really young, and she stayed there until she was like of age, or like 18.
Yeah.
And so she basically was raised with the humans, and we basically see a little bit of like how that was like, but it's sprinkled throughout the book. But we do kind of get pretty early off that her main kind of best friend is a human, and her name's Serena, I think. And Serena disappears, and Misery doesn't really know why, where, how. She only knows this name, which is L-E.
I don't remember.
It's L-E. I didn't write it down.
I didn't write it down either.
Moreland. It's like L.E. Moreland.
Mm-hmm.
L.E. Moreland or something like that. And so she's like trying to find, like, this is her best friend basically. And we kind of get to Misery where she's working in the human world. She kind of doesn't really want anything to do with vampires. She doesn't feel like she's fit in there because she wasn't raised there. So she's working in the human world, parading around as a human, working as a coder. She does tech. And she basically is brought to have counsel with her father, who asks her to basically be collateral again with the werewolves, because now the werewolves now I think the humans have a new governor that are getting buddy with the werewolves. And for the vampires to kind of protect the peace, there's a thing with the vampires is there's a lot less vampires than there are like humans and werewolves. So like her father is like trying to like keep, alliance and protect peace. So they're kind of they're gonna marry her off to the alpha. And then this is a new alpha. He like originally killed the old one.
And lo and behold, his name is Lo Moreland.
Yeah.
L.E. Moreland.
So she agrees because once she hears his name. And so the beginning of the book starts off as like they're getting married. Like it just kind of dives right in. And then the second chapter is you get that kind of backstory of like, this is why she decided to go through with it.
You did a really good job of summarizing that.
Oh, thanks. Basically, we get a little bit at the wedding. Lo, like that's the alpha's name, the werewolf, he loses his mind over her scent. Like he is like, why do you smell like that? Blah 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 blah. And then they go on like nothing has happened. Like it's very much like a interesting thing.
It's okay. It's a very interesting thing for me because I don't really read a lot of books in the paranormal fantasy realm. So the whole thing with like vampires and werewolves and having sense and then being like obedient is very weird to me.
But it is a good introductory book if you are thinking about going more into the paranormal shifter like thing. I think it's a very like tame introductory, and I say tame like wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Even though
if you don't like this book, don't
go further.
Don't try.
He like loses his mind over her scent, and she's just like, oh, I guess I smell bad. Like, and basically, so going back, these weddings have happened before. But at the last one, they called it the Aster, which I think is really funny because I don't know. Have you watched Young Justice? And I don't. So it's like a whole thing where it's like feeling the Aster, and I just couldn't get that out of my head. Anyway, if you know, you know. But basically, the Aster, like there was like a whole bunch of blood spilled between the vampires and the werewolves, and they don't want that to happen. And the big thing is the vampires have purple blood and the wolves have green blood. And so
which is very interesting. And then I think vampires have purple eyes, right?
Yeah, I think so. So it's like they're very, and there's differences between them, and werewolves are typically stronger, which I also thought was interesting because usually in a lot of these you see them like each one is pretty strong itself, but it's interesting because you have Misery, who is like the vampire love interest, and like she's not soft by any means of the word, but they really do stress that like the werewolves are a lot more
like she could
strong.
Be crushed by a stronger werewolf.
Exactly.
It made very clear that Lo doesn't like Misery's scent, and she is very kind of self-conscious about it. She like goes out of her way to bathe more, just to be more appealing.
Unscented.
Not appealing, but just to be more courteous to her like husband.
Yeah.
Because she is a nice person, I would say, or a nice vampire. When she meets him at the wedding, Misery says something along the lines that like he invented chiseled jawline.
She's a very quippy character, and some of her one-liners are just really funny.
Yeah, they're really funny.
And
but they're also like, whoa.
Yeah, they're like, what are you talking
about?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically Lo is really hot, and she's marrying this guy, and he's emotionally unavailable, and of course she's going into this thinking that he hates her because vampires and werewolves historically hate one another. And this is just a political alliance that they'll probably be in for maybe
a year. It's only for a year, I believe.
Yeah. So it's like temporary. And she's trying to make the best of her situation, but she's also not trying to make a friendship with
she's there to find
husband,
her
best
friend.
Yeah.
Which I actually I liked that was her driving factor.
I agree.
Because it was really cute, and then you
so
kind of get to see snippets of their relationship, and it was like how she, like basically in my head, like Misery's whole kind of purpose in this book is like finding a home, because she doesn't really have one, and you really see that develop, and I think it's actually just so adorable.
It is very sweet. I do have issue with how it unfolds later because of Lo, but we'll talk about it when we get there. So basically at her wedding, she kind of doesn't get pulled aside by the governor, but kind of finds herself talking one-on-one with the governor about Lo, and how Lo had a mate prior to getting married to Misery. And so, like, in mates of werewolves, it's like the best thing you could ever have with a person, the deepest connection you could ever have with another werewolf, and like if your mate dies, like you die, right? And they explain it in the book as if they're like seeing a new color, or like
it's like fated mates. Like if you're, it's like. It's like your basic ACOTAR fated mates thing, just in like a wolf version.
Yeah. But it's unfortunate that vampires didn't have something similar.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of the whole point. Like there's this book really, like even between Misery and Lowell, they're so like opposites. Like everything is so opposite between them, and it just really kind of drives home this whole point of like they don't really understand each other, and also like everything they do is very different, and but they still kind of come together at some point. So I don't know if it was necessarily purposeful, but I just noticed that like even a lot of the things they do and like who they are, like a lot of it is very like opposite, and they're almost like the antithesis of each other in a way.
While she's talking, wait. Oh yeah, so the governor lets slip to her that his mate is a girl named Gabby. Gabby is the werewolf that is the collateral for the vampires.
Yeah.
So her brother, her twin brother, what's her twin brother's name?
Owen. I like
Misery. I like Owen too. But Misery has a twin brother named Owen, and he basically is in the same boat as her, where he had to marry a werewolf, Gabby.
I don't think they had to get married.
I thought they did have to get married.
They had to get married? I thought they just had to, I think they just kept her as collateral.
Oh.
Just think, like, I don't think they got married. I just think it was like in case the werewolf decided to kill Misery, like they have someone important to her.
Oh.
So it wasn't like a one-off trade. I don't think they actually got married though.
Oh, I thought they got married.
And it was like, and Gabby is Lowell's mate, essentially.
Yes, and then after she has this conversation with the governor, she walks in the stairwell, and she hears Lo talking with like his second, or whatever.
Yeah, his seconds. He has like 17 of them.
Yeah, a couple of his seconds, quote unquote, which are just like his men that he trusts with his life or whatever. And they're talking about like, that's my mate. I can't believe she's my mate.
Well, I feel like they don't say the word. I think like the whole thing is like they're just like, if you're sure, like, they're basically, it's given up very quickly, like, this kind of idea where it's, like, his reaction to her wasn't normal, and they don't, I feel like it's toeing over, it's like, well, if you reacted to her, if this is true, like, all of these things, and in Misery's head, she's thinking it's of Gabby, but, like, the readers firmly know Misery is his mate. Like, it's never, like, a secret. I don't think so.
Yeah, okay. I thought that they had played it kind of well, because towards like the middle of the book, for the longest time, I thought it was Misery that was his mate.
Yeah.
And then towards the middle of the book, I kind of was like, oh, maybe Misery isn't his mate, because they're so different. And because we're seeing the book through her eyes.
Yeah.
So it's easy to believe like, oh, maybe it's just
I think she was just a little dumb, to be entirely honest.
That's fair.
Because a lot of the things she did, I was like, did we think that through? But anyway.
Okay. A lot of the things I do. Do I think it through?
And I'm like, so fair.
After this whole whispering in corridors, Lo and Misery have their first dance as husband and wife. And again, with the smell, she's like, do you hate me? It's like a very Bella Edward moment. But it's a very Bella Edward moment, and the next thing you know, someone's trying to kill Misery.
Yeah.
Which is like, you learn this is nothing new.
Yeah.
Someone's always trying to kill Misery, like her whole life.
And Lowell saves her life, basically. Because he stops the knife from going and, like, stabbing her. Which was nice of him. Didn't have to do that. So, look at that.
But also, while they were dancing, I think Lo was asking her about her life and the assassination attempts made on her, and he was like, it's important for me to know so I can protect you. And so you definitely know, like, he likes her.
I think, okay, one thing that I think is just so brilliant, I can't say it, brilliantly.
Yeah.
It's so brilliantly done in this book is before each chapter, you kind of get a snippet of Lo's POV or like point of view.
It is.
And he is like head over heels for her. Like that's why it's like I feel like it's never a secret because he never says her name, but he always says things that's like I can't stay away from her even though I must. Or it's like I love it when she smiles even though it's not at me. Like just random lines before each chapter where you're like, this dude's got it bad. It's chapter 3. Like, let's calm down.
That is true. That happens. However, I didn't read the book. I listened to the audiobook.
Yeah, that is true.
So in the audiobook, those snippets were like a random man going like, I must not look at her. And then I'd be like, oh, sir. I'm sorry.
Like, that would be different.
It was very different. Like, I could tell he liked her.
Yeah.
But it was like, more brooding.
I think it was, like, I don't know. Because I see, like, a lot of times you'll see these books in, like, a dual POV. And I was really hoping we'd get that. But I just kind of loved a little bit of the teasers to, like, tell you how Lowell was feeling and how his feelings were developing. And they were such short kind of little things that it was just really cute.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so after the wedding, moving in with Lo.
Yeah.
So basically, Misery is moving in with Lo. They're in separate rooms, of course, because they don't actually know each other. They don't plan to get to know each other. But you immediately find out that there are a lot of stereotypes about the other species. And that there are a lot of misconceptions being thrown around. And so you kind of just find that she's like challenging what they know and telling them like, oh, this isn't actually how we work, you know?
And it's like both, like they both just don't know anything about each other essentially, and you're kind of like, it's used as like a point to discover more about the world building and stuff, but also kind of see how like a lot of their animosity and stuff isn't based off of knowledge, it's just based off of rumors and like fear. And I think it's really interesting because a lot of those scenes happen with Lowell's little sister, where she's like quizzing her, Misery about like, well, do you do this? Do you do that? Blah, 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 blah. And Lowell's little sister, best part of the book. I personally loved her. I loved her dynamic with Misery because Misery, she... like vampire and werewolves are very different. Like vampires are like for the greater good. Like they don't really do things like Misery doesn't have a birthday. Like they're not very touchy-feely. Like she's close with her brother, but like not really. Like they're very much like not family oriented. They're like for the greater good of the entire vampire society. And because her father's the leader, like I think that, and she also just didn't grow up with them. Like she's very like held back emotionally. And Anna just tears right through that. Like, punches it down.
It's super cute, their interactions. I also think that we get a lot of that with Lowe's men.
Yeah.
And like
Alex was a big one.
Yeah.
The tech guy.
Also seeing how it opens up that world and like opening up to the people, I think it's really cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they kind of learn not necessarily not to be like how not to be scared of each other because they understand each other a lot more.
Also, like 5 minutes within moving in, she's trying to get killed again.
Oh yeah.
Not like she's trying to get killed, but someone's trying to kill her. Yeah.
And it's this dude Max, and he's young. He's like a really young boy. I think like 13. And basically, he kind of confronts her and just starts telling her of all of the people he's lost because of vampires. And she's just like, I don't know what you want me to do about it. And then like basically because she gets killed so much, like she's taken martial arts training, or she's at least done some type of like self-defense.
She's an independent woman.
Yes. And so she has him by like the throat, and it's like showing her fangs, and of course that's when everyone comes in and they're like, what are you doing? They're like, 5 minutes in, you're already trying to kill someone. And she's like, I'm just not gonna let somebody kill me. Like,
right. And of everyone who's accusing her of being a dirty vampire, trying to just kill her way into the territory, Lo is like, I want to hear your story. And he brings her aside. And he's just so in love with her.
He's like, what actually happened?
I know.
What happened?
It's like, I believe you.
But like, I don't even think like he plays it off like he doesn't believe her, because he puts like a guard with her and stuff like that. And he basically, because we find out later that he can smell lies, which I don't.
But also that he has like tight security, and like he knew Max was going to betray him
and
stuff.
Like Max turns out to be a bigger player than just like that thing. Like he ends up kind of being more of a betrayal to the whole werewolf society and like pack. But I just thought it was interesting because like it does turn like it is played off as like he thinks like she is the one who actually did attack him first, because Max is like, I was just standing there, and then like her teeth are so sharp, like woe is me. And she's like, dude, come on. And then it turns out like all the extra security and stuff was just for her protection. He actually like knew Max was lying. So yeah, that was like interesting.
And it was cute.
Yeah.
After that whole thing happened, we meet Anna. And we meet Anna because we're also introduced to Serena and her friendship with Serena, and how Serena's disappeared and left her cat with Misery. And Misery hates her cat.
Misery doesn't like animals in general.
But basically, Misery's all moved in, and she's like, where the fuck is Serena's cat? And then we find Anna. Does she sneak through? How does she get
Anna
through?
gets in. So Misery's room used to be Anna's room. But because Anna's room was close to Lowell's room, they like moved Anna, I think, to another room, and then so that Misery was closer to Lowell for like I'm assuming it's for her protection, like especially because like he doesn't know that like she's his mate and stuff, so he wants to be close, and like he doesn't want anyone to like touch her or things like that. Like we find out later, but Anna knows how to get in and out of that room very easily, and she's like, Misery's like, I locked the door, and she's like, oh, I crawled in there, and Misery's not having it.
Yeah. But basically, Anna has claimed Serena's cat as her own and calls Serena's cat Sparkles.
Yeah.
And it's so cute.
It's so adorable.
Yeah.
Anna's just literally the best character.
And Anna's basically just like, is it true that vampires do this and that? And she's like, no, but I could.
And Misery tries to be very like off-putting, and it just never works.
Never works.
And also, I think it's also really funny because Misery doesn't really know anything about like anything, so she's like, this child who could be 3 to 13 is like here, and it's just really funny. I think their interactions are very enjoyable. Basically, we learn that Anna, because Misery thinks that Anna is Lil's child at first, and she's like, where's your father? Who's your father? Like, because remember, she thinks Gabby is his mate, so she's like, okay, I took his mate away from her, but like, did I take a mother from her child as well? Like, but we find out that it's Lil's sister, and that they're
half sister.
Well, it's Lil's half sister, and that their mother died, and that Lil's kind of just been raising her ever since all of that happened. And it's his like basically soft spot. Like he will do anything for that girl. Like he's actually a really good brother. It's actually very adorable. It's kind of like one of the things that I was like, oh, I actually really like about him. And I also think it's the thing that really brought them together as well, and like showed him that he could trust Misery, is like how she responded to Anna. And
I wrote, also Lo calls her love, and I think that's so sweet, but I've never had a man figure in my life that expressed to me, so it gave me the ick. because Misery is here to find Serena,
Yeah.
she's convinced that Serena's in this territory being
or at
locked up
least
somewhere.
that like
Yeah.
they know more about what happened.
Mm-hmm. She's trying to IT her way out of this situation and find her best friend.
So she ends up breaking into Lowell's room,
Mm-hmm.
which this is where I was like, okay, this is a little dumb because in my head we make this huge big thing about scents. And she's just tramping around his room, like touching everything, going through drawers, trying to find evidence. But like she doesn't really have time to like hack her way through the computer or like, and maybe that was like an office, but like she's going through and she's trying to find information. And I think we do get to know a lot about Lowell in this kind of scene. Like she finds drawings because he used to be an architecture major or like do architecture.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, so she finds drawings of like cities and basically he used to live abroad, I don't remember where, and did architecture and then he had to move back home after everything that happened. And I don't remember how his mom died, but I feel like that was a really big part of it. And then he had to kind of step into being an alpha, so he had to kind of put that dream aside. So she was like finding all of these things, and she actually finds a drawing that he had made of her, and she's like, oh my god, why does he have a drawing of me? And then at that point where I'm like, obviously this man's obsessed with you, like she's like, oh, must be weird. Like whatever. But we kind of get a little bit of backstory between like Lola, and then like we see a picture with him, his mom, and Anna, and we kind of see kind of how he's very family oriented, kind of the things he loves, and also that she's just spreading her scent all over the room,
all over,
and doesn't even think about it.
And she gets caught.
Oh yeah.
She gets caught, and Lo is like, "What are you doing? I have an IT system."
Well, I think it was actually really smart how he went about catching her, because he didn't like catch her right off the bat. Like she kind of got away with it, but then she didn't really find anything. So then when she thought they were distracted, he made it purposeful to say like, "Oh, we're going to go do this," as like a time for her to sneak away. And then she goes back and she sends one of his seconds as like a wolf, and the second is like basically there watching her sneak through everything, and he's like, your scent was everywhere, like why did you, like how did you're not really good at sneaking around and stuff. And I thought that was really smart. I was like, he didn't really, I think it shows how good he is at being alpha, and I think that was really things like he is a very good leader and he's not reactive. And I feel like with these types of books, you always see like the alpha, like he's a very non-reactive man. And I feel like that's so rare. Like, not like in these types of books, like you always have that like brooding male character. Like I wouldn't call him brooding. He's just...
He's playing chess and everyone else playing checkers.
Like, I don't know. I really like that about him, where he takes his time to make conscious decisions.
No, but I thought that she got caught because she met Alex. And then she was trying to hack something, no?
No, because I remember that being such a big thing, because he sets it up where she goes back again and he's like, your scent was everywhere. And she's like, this was a trap. And he's like, yeah, you're just a dumbass.
And then after this, I think Anna almost gets kidnapped by Max.
Yeah, which is like the guy who tried to kill her in the werewolf.
And Misery goes and tries to save Anna because she likes Anna and has a soft spot for her.
Yeah.
And Lo sees this, and I think this is when their alliance begins.
And I think so, like, basically Misery is kind of confined to her room because, like, she's not really... It's not that she's not welcome there, it's just, like, all the other werewolves aren't necessarily like her biggest fan, and everything that happened with Max before, like Lowell's there, like makes it to like keep her safe, but like she's kind of just confined to her room, and she's kind of watching through the window them having this big barbecue party, and Anna's being led away into like this random forest by Max, and she's like, what the heck's going on? No one's paying attention, blah, 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 blah. And then she like jumps, and basically vampires aren't like definitely, you know, like sun won't kill them, but they'll get burned very easily. Like they need like high SPF essentially. So she runs out into the sun, which is like this big self-sacrificing kind of move. And it turns out it was like a whole ploy that Lowell had to draw out Max and the fact that he is part of the Loyalists, which is a whole other thing. So within the werewolf regime, I guess, there's also some kind of like political beef almost, because we had this old alpha who Lowell basically overthrew. And there's still another territory who was kind of under that old alpha regime, or another pack. And that pack is ran by the wife, or the like, I don't know if they're mates, but like the wife of that old alpha. And even though Lowell is head alpha, like there's still a lot of people who still side with the way the old things were done, especially now that Lowell's taken this vampire bride, like all of this. And Max kind of has these same thoughts because vampires have killed a lot of werewolves, and or like this whole story. And so there's kind of this tension between Lowell and the Loyalists, and he's trying to understand what their plan is and how it's going to affect him and his pack. And so he thinks they want something to do with Anna, and that's kind of why they had this whole thing. And they were like watching him kidnap her sister, and they were going to see who Max was talking to and kind of get more information there. And then like Misery kind of ruined it, but like not really. And yeah, I think that definitely was the point at which they connected, because he was like, there was really no reason for her to do that. And I think even in one of the snippets before, you know, like of his, before every chapter, it is basically saying it would be a lot easier if you didn't like her as a person too, which I just thought was so cute.
But yeah, this opened up his trust towards Misery, and he basically tells Misery Anna is his like quote unquote half sister, and she is part werewolf, part human. And so he's trying to protect her. And he's trying to figure out what the Loyalists are doing. And so he's like, I want you to work with me in helping find all these things out. And is it at this point where she tells him about Serena too?
Yeah, because once she kind of like, once he finds her in his office, or once he finds her kind of scouring around looking, he's like, what are you looking for? And he has Alex kind of, because she hacks through the whole thing, and Alex is like, wow, like that's impressive because she's a good hacker. And they find that like she's searching for these things like about Serena and like the name and all of this stuff. And so she does tell her. And I think we also find out around this point that Anna's full name, which is
matches up with the
L.E. Moreland, so that it's not necessarily Lowell that Serena was looking into, it was maybe Anna. And this whole point of her being a hybrid and that kind of being unheard of. And that's kind of where they kind of band together, where they're like, obviously Anna has something to do with the disappearance of Serena, so if we figure out why Anna's what the play Anna is, I can protect my sister, you can find Serena, and he basically really just trusts her with this really big information. And he's like, I don't know if I should, but I have a feeling that I should, so I'm gonna give you this information. And he allows her full access to like work with Alex to like figure out what's going on, which is the hacker werewolf guy.
But basically they build this kind of trust in each other, and then they have to go on their first mission, which, how does she convince him to let her go? I don't remember.
This is also the thing that's really funny, because this is kind of the thing where it's like they're so opposites. Like things that he's really good at, she's terrible at, and things that he's terrible at, she's really good at. Like he can't use a computer to save his life. And basically,
that was so cute.
He had been invited by, so you know, the Loyalists and the old Alpha's wife typically it's custom for the wife of a dethroned alpha to invite the new alpha, and Lowell was gonna go by himself, but Misery's basically like, take me with you. You know literally nothing about computers, because they were going to kind of hack their servers to like watch them, because they think they're after, like, the loyalists are after Anna, and they're trying to figure out what they're up to. And so she's like, take me with you. Like, I can hold my own. Like, you know I can fight. Like, let's go. And he agrees, but he only agrees if he can scent mark her.
That was different for me. If you're new to this realm, that's like the first point of intimacy they have, and it was weird. It was really weird. If you watch our Tearsmith video, it's probably like that.
It's actually probably exactly like that.
It's probably just like that.
Basically, it's kind of this way to like mark her as his, and show that it's not, there's more to their relationship, and that like she's important to him, and if she's like wearing his scent, that means there's some type of intimacy. And usually scent marking is only done with mates. Like, he doesn't say it, like he kind of skirts around it, but it's like this whole thing, and the scene is very like.
But I thought it was imperative that he sense mark her so that it kind of protects her in some way.
It does protect her, but I think,
because then if people fuck with her, then they're fucking with him. Basically.
Yeah, it's like kind of this like,
it's not just
ownership.
like,
it's kind of a brand. I feel like that's like, it's a set brand saying like, this is my territory. Like, you mess with it, you mess with me.
Exactly. And so it gives her some sort of protection. He just didn't say that he wanted to send her. Well, like, I'm sure he wanted to, but
he enjoyed that a lot.
He was hard.
I will just say that the sexy scenes, like, they came out of nowhere in this book. Like, you're like, okay, we're on this mission, now they're on the planet, and things go down, and you're like, are we still on the like, y'all okay? And then you think you're done, and you're not.
No, it's not. But it was good. It was surprisingly good until they started having sex, and then I was a little too surprised, but it was still good. My literal notes was, you guys, I'm new to this genre. I don't know why I didn't know it would be so sexual. Like, Daddy, why? Why you gotta be sucking and licking on my neck and stuff? That's my literal note. Yeah. But they were so consumed with each other in that moment. Like, clearly they're mates. She doesn't understand why she has this strong attraction, infatuation towards him when he's scenting her. Yeah. He's definitely sucking, licking up on her neck for a bit.
Does he bite her? I think, like, he does bite her, but not to break skin. Yeah. Like, he's just getting
like, a little nibble. Her.
But I also think this is the first time, like, with the Semerkin, we actually see a shift in Misery, because she's not a feeling person. Like, she's very, like, I'm gonna hide. Like, she loves very deeply. Like, we can see she's doing all of this for her best friend. Like, but she's not someone who confronts her feelings. And even when she's talking about him, like, she finds him attractive, but there's never feeling behind it. And this is the first time she's kind of like, I feel something for this man. Yeah. And I think that was a very interesting shift, because I think it changes the way they interact. Like, there is a big shift before and after kind of that interaction mark. Like, they really just can't keep their hands off of each other after that.
Like, before, I feel like she was so content just trying to be his friend.
Yeah.
Because in her mind, Gabby is his mate. And she's very, like, she doesn't want to get in between that. Yeah. And she's very happy just being, like, the collateral. Yeah. But after, she's like, this could be something. Yeah. I don't know what, but I like it. Yeah. And she wants more.
Yeah. And she's like, I've never felt this. Like, what is this? And it's like something where she's not someone who's ever kind of had romantic relationships. Like I said, her through the book, she's really searching for a home because she doesn't fit in with humans. She doesn't fit in with vampires. She obviously doesn't fit in with werewolves. She's kind of the only person she's fit in with was Serena, and Serena's gone. And I think that's why she's like, not that their love and friendship wasn't real, but I feel like she definitely has part of her identity attached to Serena. And you see that kind of get dismantled a little bit as she lives without her, I guess. And I think that's also because one thing to note is when the last interaction she had with Serena was like this whole fight that they had where it was kind of this conversation of like, we need to do different things, we're different people, like that's kind of what I got from it. And it's just very interesting, like that's kind of how they left off, and then she has to go on this whole journey where she kind of really does build a life outside of Serena now, where she didn't really have one before.
But I think that was definitely out of concern in Serena's parts. I think that Ali Hazelwood does a really good job of staying true to her narrator's point of view, because we see these experiences that she's having, and it's very easy for me to see how Misery can understand it as being something else.
Yeah.
Because when I'm first told this story through Misery's eyes, I can immediately see that like Serena's telling her that you need to have a life outside of me because she's concerned.
Yeah.
But then as we continue to go further into the story and we come across those moments again, because Misery is anxious about it and she reflects, she thinks maybe she's making the wrong choices, or maybe she's doubting the reason why Serena's missing. Maybe Serena's just decided to leave.
Yeah.
And I believed her in that moment too, of her doubts. So I think that was really well written.
Yeah. I think like one thing that is just kind of like a side note that I just thought was kind of hilarious is the whole peanut butter thing. And so basically vampires don't eat, but Serena made Misery try peanut butter, and now Misery has this like kind of obsession with peanut butter, and Lowell finds it so funny. And also just like she has shame in it because vampires aren't supposed to do things for pleasure, basically. And like eating or like even drinking blood, it's not necessarily for pleasure, it's just to like survive. And so like her eating is just like this whole thing, and she's like so ashamed of it, and Lowell's just like, here, have all the peanut butter you want. And it's just a really cute moment between them that I thought was really funny.
It is really cute. But moving on from like her backstory with Serena, they're in this mission where they're trying to hack Emery's systems to understand more about the Loyalists, and so they're at dinner, and of course Misery is the only vampire there, and no one knows how she eats, so they're using that to their advantage.
Yeah.
And they're going to use the time that she eats to sneak off, hack the system. More happens than that. More things happen.
They basically break into Emery's office and they like upload the hacker thingy, whatever, to like dismantle their system or whatever, or at least like so they can watch it. But it takes time for that to kind of upload or whatever, and they're there under the pretense that like she's feeding, and like Lowell just goes with her, but then they get caught, and so there's a number of things where I'm like, okay, so Misery is just like, oh, kiss me, we can pretend we're making out, we're like a newlywed couple, and Lowell's like, I got one better.
That's true.
Why don't you drink for me? We said you were eating. Just drink for me. And Misery's like, you must be crazy. He's like, do it. Basically.
And Misery doesn't know that feeding from a live host is inherently sexual for vampires. Like, we learn in the Vampire Society that there are blood banks. Vampires don't really consume from a live host.
It's not
frowned
something,
on. And she's seen her dad do it a couple times.
Yeah.
But no one has told her that it's a sexual thing. So when she's feeding from him, it's interesting.
they're just literally having a whole grand old time in this one poor woman's office, and they get caught, and they're like, and it's basically, yeah, like they're like, wow, you let her feed from you, like this whole thing.
I just have to know, this is what I wrote. She, so, it's so sexual, she comes from this.
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
That's literally, I wasn't expecting to read that. And it's so funny because he liked it too. He was hard as fuck. Those are my notes from the scene.
Yeah, it definitely is the first time that, not necessarily that they're intimate, but that they've experienced
That type of
intimacy.
pleasure together. That type of experience together.
Yeah.
And it was cute, but it was like, did definitely come out of nowhere.
Oh,
Took me by surprise.
I have
in
this
every
quote.
sense of the word.
I have this quote that I wrote that was so funny, where he basically, like, after the whole thing, he's like, I could fuck you very nicely right now. And I was just like, okay.
And then I'm also like, who says that? Who is friends that says that?
And I think that's really what catapults, like the scent marking was like kind of a testing of water, and then they're like, wow, we have some response to each other, and it kind of catapults not necessarily their relationship in a, like, they're still building intimacy with each other and getting to know each other, but in a more physical way. They're like, we like being physical with each other. And I think Lowell's at the point where he's like, I'll take whatever I can get, because and Misery's like, I don't know what's going on, he has a mate, like all of this stuff, but I love the way I feel and the way he makes me feel, like I'm not gonna say no.
Right. And I think Misery engages in this thinking that this is kind of like a friends with benefits situation.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think she knows she's falling for him yet, but she is definitely like, I like this. I want to keep doing this because it feels good.
Yeah.
So after this, they come back home, and they're trying to, I don't know, they've had these sexual encounters, intimate encounters, and they're trying to navigate their life knowing that they have done that.
Yeah.
Like, do they still want to continue to do that or not? And it's a little awkward between them, I would say.
Yeah. But I do think they, like, get over that pretty quickly.
No, it is very quick because they go straight back into it.
Yeah.
They never go all the way.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And we learn later that it's purposeful. Because at this point in the story, I'm like, just fuck.
Yeah. No, that's, and honestly, that's how I kind of feel about Tear Smoke too. I'm like,
Yeah.
y'all just need to get it out of your system at this point.
At this point.
Just go for it.
I think it's at this part after their mission where they get closer to.
Yeah.
They're kind of borderline romantic partners.
Yeah.
Where they're like sleeping together now.
He like is with her. They don't bathe together, but he's sitting there while she's in the bath, like rubbing her feet. Like,
and he has insomnia because I think of the
that
trauma
was really
that happened.
cute.
Yeah, of the trauma that happened with his mom and like the stresses that he has trying to be the alpha pack. Like, he has insomnia and he can't sleep. So what she does is she's like, oh, my best friend Steamy used to have insomnia, and I would just, you know, be next to her when she slept. So they would sleep together, and like he'd fall asleep next to her, and that was really cute.
Yeah.
Also wanted to note, like, in this section of the book, we find out from Owen that it's bad to continually suck blood from a live host unless like you love them.
Like a bond forms that's very similar to, like, I think a mate
Yeah,
bond.
so
like,
you're just not supposed to do that.
Yeah, and he's like, you guys can, you know, hook up all you want, but just stop drinking from him. Because she basically asks afterwards, like, what happens when you drink from live host? And he's like, who did you drink from? She's like, no one. He's like, I'm not dumb. Like, you obviously are asking, especially because you drink from someone.
Right. But this is when we find out that maybe this is a bad thing that they're doing, and I think she also kind of has this in the back of her mind when they continue to be intimate with one another.
But I don't think it really stops them.
It doesn't, because she comes to the conclusion that like it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So basically, like, she doesn't eat. The only thing she eats is peanut butter. So she was eating the peanut butter, and she was with Lowell, and she just kind of passes out, and she was out for 5 days. There's poison in her system, and you know, there's all this buildup in the book because it's like there are many attempts on her life. Like this, like, isn't very new, but there's something like, I feel like there's a tone in the book. It's not outwardly said, but there's something different from this attempt. I feel like you get kind of this understanding, and we also know that she's not the only one who eats the peanut butter. Anna eats the peanut butter as well. And so Lowell actually has Anna like hidden away in a secret place that nobody knows, and he's starting not to trust people. But he does tell Misery where Anna is, which kind of also shows how much he trusts her. He doesn't tell literally anyone, like not his seconds, like literally no one else. But I also know that he's like really protective of, like, you basically kind of get her in and out, like hearing things within the book at least. Like there's very short sections, and he's like, they're like, Lowell, you should go eat. He's like, no, like don't touch. Like I need to still be around her. And I think that's also what kind of kicks in, at least for him. Like he's never really reluctant, I would say, to be around her, even though he's like kind of hiding his mate with likeness from her. But I think it kind of kicks in this kind of thing of like, I need to be around her always, like this very much yearning and desire that was there, but I think it was hidden a lot more. But she's fine. It works it out of her system, and she sees Lowell in wolf form, which was really cute, and he like snuggles with her in her closet. She likes sleeping in the closet and not in bed because she's a vampire.
But also, when I imagine Lowell in his wolf form, I imagine Jacob from Twilight.
I just don't know. I just was like,
I'm just Twilight all the way.
All Twilight.
After this event, we meet up with Owen and Gabby. I think Owen invites Lo and Misery over to talk about something important regarding the politics in their world.
Yeah. Well, also because she did get assassination attempt, and there was a thing where it seemed like it was an assassination attempt to the collateral, which can be an outright war. So they had to kind of have like, you know, a system to keep everything at bay and be like, no, it wasn't. It was. I think the saving grace was the poison was toxic to both werewolves and vampires. So it wasn't as if Misery was a target, and we still don't know if it was actually meant for Anna or not.
But throughout this conversation, we get Misery's internal monologue of insecurity.
Yeah.
Where, you know, she's been with Lo and they've been intimate, and she's kind of like, this is the first time I'm going to actually be confronted with his mate, Gabby.
She's like,
and,
I'm the other woman.
And all of these crazy political things are happening. All she can think of is, oh, my man.
And she's really shocked because she expects him to have some type of like interaction with him, or like Gabby and him to have this interaction, but it's very much like sergeant, like kind of like, is there anything to report? What's going on? And I think there's this one kind of, you know, moment where she kind of realizes that like he doesn't really know what Gabby studied in college or something like that, and it kind of has her thinking. She asked him, he's like, what did I study in college? And he's like, nose down, like every single thing. And she's like
we know he doesn't like Gabby.
Yeah, like that. Basically, I think it like,
she knows now he doesn't like Gabby like that.
It's like the thing where she kind of realizes like there's no way Gabby's his mate, like at all.
So she's kind of just contemplating this the whole night, while Owen and Lo are talking about Owen's plan to kind of dethrone his father. He's kind of saying he hates the current system in the world of like giving collaterals and giving up people that they love and making them go through this hardship. He wants to dethrone his dad and kind of make something new.
Yeah. And Misery's really upset with this because she's like, you're gonna get killed, like what are you doing? Like you can't, like when is this happening? Like it's a really touching moment, I think, because I really do kind of like Owen and Misery's relationship as siblings. I think it's a very dynamic one that you don't really see often. But yeah, so Misery is kind of taken aback by this whole thing of like, Gabby's definitely not his mate. So her brain starts percolating.
That's a peculiar word. I like it. But it's true. And I think after dinner, they're in the human world.
I have no idea where they are.
I think they're in the human world because they go to her apartment and they're close to her
Yeah,
apartment.
okay. I kind of got confused at that point because I skipped over a little bit,
It's
and
okay.
then I was like, "Where are they?" But I think you're right.
I don't exactly remember either, but they're close enough to her human world apartment
Yeah.
where they go to her human apartment.
Yeah.
And so they go, and they have sex.
Okay, Danny, you have to. Basically, she kind of confronts him. Well, actually, no, they do. No, because that was the thing that really pissed me off.
Me too! I was big mad.
Because
why would he say this?
Okay, so basically, they do
emotionally absent men.
They do become intimate with each other.
Okay, Mom.
But basically, we also get introduced to the anatomy of a werewolf.
I was so taken aback.
Basically,
gasped.
male werewolves, when with their mate.
This is birds and the bees. Tell you everything, but werewolves are kind of like dogs, so if you know how dogs mate, it's
I
the
didn't
same
actually
thing.
know that was true.
I grew up.
That makes it creepier.
I grew up with I grew up with cousins who would mate their dogs and who would breed their dogs with other breeds of dogs, and I know the birds and the bees with dogs. So if you know the birds and the bees with dogs, that's what happened in this book with Lo and Misery, and I wasn't prepared.
I just say you look it up. I think I'm not a stranger to these types of books, so it wasn't something that threw me off guard, and I think it was very tame.
I was so off guard.
Very tame.
And I am not familiar with these
and
books.
He was very much like, our anatomy doesn't align, so we can't, go as far as she wanted.
He was very adamant that we can't go all the way. We can only do what we've been doing, and I'm happy doing what we've been doing.
And then she blinks her eyes. She said, "Please." He's like, I'm ready. Let's go.
Anywho, Misery's putting 2 and 3 together, and she's like, "Okay, I see now. I'm your mate because you only do the things that dogs do." If you're with your mate.
So basically, Misery's just kind of at the point where she's like, I am your mate. And she kind of confronts Lowell, and she's like, you kind of say this is how mates are, this is kind of how we are. And it's really sad because she's not the type of person to have feelings, but I think she really does take the step, and she's like, I feel the same way. She does say that, and she's like, I feel this, I'm kind of here with this. She's okay with it, which is I think based off of how she's acted, she's not a touchy-feely person, so this is a big step for her. And he basically is like, oh sweetie, you read all this wrong.
It makes me so mad because in the books she's the one. She's his mate, but then when you get to this part, I was baffled because he continued to deny that was true.
Yeah.
And I even felt I was gaslighted as a reader because I was like, no, maybe they aren't mates. And to some extent, you read the fantasy, romantasy realm enough that all of the main characters are always mates.
Yeah.
So I thought it was quite interesting that maybe our 2 main characters weren't supposed to be mates, especially because they're complete opposites of one another, but they still found each other.
Yeah.
But lo and behold, Lo was just being an asshole, and he was gaslighting her and being like, don't mistake your feelings as anything more than love or I don't know, romantic like that.
Yeah.
I know that you're just some sad person who lost her best friend, who's never had a home, who's just trying to find one.
Exactly.
And it hurts so bad
He
to
really
hear
threw that in her face. And I think the part, like, I wrote down this line, like, he was like, you know, I really enjoyed kind of like our friendship, like, I enjoy, you know, our intimacy. And he was like, and I wish you the best.
Yeah.
And then he was like, but like, we're not mates. Like, that's not what it is. And I do think he does it in like, it's not like a thing. And I, like, you're right. Like, it's told from Misery's perspective. So we really don't know how it's come across. Like, I definitely don't think Misery's a reliable narrator in a lot of things. Like, she's quite unreliable in how she sees things. But the way that she sees it is very much like there's no hesitation, there's no, like, he's just like, how could you deduce this at all?
Yeah, it was so hurtful
It
to
was
read.
really,
It actually kind of changed how I viewed Lo.
yeah,
From all of our perspectives we've gotten from
yeah,
him before.
yeah,
And even like moving forward from
yeah,
this, it was very hard for me to be okay with how their story unfolded. Although it still unfolded that way.
I also think, like, in my head, it was just so, I think, like you were saying, like, I do think Ali Hazelwood's really good at having very expressive and very specific personalities within each of her characters. Um, and to me, that just seemed very out of character for Lowell.
Yeah.
Because in this whole movie, he's never been one to lie.
The whole
like,
movie.
and the whole book.
Yeah.
Like, he even is this person who smells lies. Like I said, he's very different. Like, he's not a reactive person, except when it comes to her. Like, even with then, he's very critical thinking. Like, he's just very much like, but, not that type of person.
Yeah, but also we've taken all of these steps
Yeah.
to build the trust between these two characters. Why wouldn't, in my mind, why wouldn't he just tell her?
Yeah.
They were close enough at
Yeah.
this point, in my opinion.
He trusted her with so much more.
Yeah.
And I get it. And like in my head, it was like the stupid thing that like all brooding men do, where they make the decision for the woman to not be in their life because they think the woman can't handle it, which is actually so annoying. And that's what's like, I feel like that's never really been the dynamic between them. Like, yes, he's always been protective of her, but like she has proven time and time again that like she can handle herself, and he's let her have that space in some sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so like for him to make that decision for her, I was just like, why? Like, it felt like almost kind of like a cliche.
Exactly.
And not in the thing where it actually was what needed to drive the story forward. Like, I think there could have been something else there that made a lot more sense.
Mm-hmm. And they kind of, moving forward, they kind of skip over that too. Like, they talk about it a little bit, but you just read it and you're so hurt, and then you're just like distraught by the things that he threw in her face and the things that she told him in confidence, and how it was thrown away. And then they kind of just skip over it when they're coming back together in the end.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But that was gross.
Yeah.
And basically, once he tells her this whole spiel of they're actually not mates, they've never been meant for each other, they kind of just were, you know, sleeping around together, doing these things just to do them. He leaves her at her apartment and has one of his attendants go pick her up. And then she gets captured.
And so this attendant, what was his name? Mick. Mick. So basically, Mick is kind of a werewolf that was in the old Alpha's kind of like regime, but him and Lowell had a history, and Lowell really trusted him. And he is actually the point person to watch over Misery for the most of the book while she's in the werewolf territory. So they also have a relationship, and she trusts him in some sense. And Lowell really kind of looks to him like, Mick is older, he lost his mate, and I think like children to the whole like vampire werewolf thing. And that's kind of like talked about, but it's talked about in the sense of like he's very sad and he always has this really sad scent, and he's trying to do his best to move forward, not in a place of like rebellion, I guess. But it turns out that it's him, and he basically drugs her and
He's the
captures
mole.
her, captures her, and
Oh.
her. And the whole time they're really kind of pointing fingers at the loyalists. Lo and behold, that's kind of not where it all ends up, and it's just kind of this whole thing where she wakes up after being captured and is in the cell with Serena, and she's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my god.
It was so beautiful.
Yeah.
How they like talked to each other after not seeing each other for like months.
Yeah.
And like seeing their friendship. It was so cute. And I'm so happy they like talked about everything because they were just holed up in a cell together.
Yeah.
They confronted each other about their last encounter and about like, what have you been hiding from me?
I do think that I thought it was interesting that they did put them in the cell together, because if I was a capturer, I probably wouldn't have. But I do think that scene was needed in a sense, but I don't know necessarily if it made practical. Yeah, exactly. Because they end up escaping basically because like Misery tries to thrall. So basically,
we didn't talk about
that was like a whole thing. Basically, vampires have this power where they can mind control, and it's called thralling. And Misery's really bad at it because she's not really she is a vampire, but she doesn't have like the built up senses to do a lot of the things. So it's one of the ways she kind of wins over some of the werewolves, because it helps. She thralls Max, one of the werewolf guy who tried to kill Anna and murder her basically, and helps like kind of get some secrets out of him in a way that didn't need him to be tortured, because he is like a 13-year-old kid. They didn't really want to torture him, but they needed to know what he was doing. And so that's kind of where it's brought up. And so Serena's like, thrall the guard, and like Misery tries and fails because she needs to have contact with them, like physical contact. Mm-hmm. And the guard's like, what are you doing? But they end up using their ninja skills because both of them took self-defense classes. And they do end up escaping, but then getting captured again. And they find out that they're not, in werewolf territory, but they're at the nest, which is what the vampire territory is called. And actually, Misery's home, like where she was not necessarily, like where she grew up, but like not really, because she lived in the human world.
But anywho, it's revealed that the big baddie is her dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plot twist.
And we also... Kind of. But we find out that the reason why he took Serena is because of a secret that she had been hiding from Misery. She's actually the same species as Anna. She's half human and half werewolf.
Which I called so early on. I was like, that's the only thing that makes sense. And I called it, and I was so proud of myself.
But yeah.
And actually, I thought the thing that was interesting was, like, he planned, like, Misery being collateral and Serena being her friendship. Like, he knew that far in advance that Serena, instead of killing Serena, like, he put her with Misery to have some company and to watch Serena and see if she presents any signs or see if she would be an issue. And I thought that was really interesting, because that I didn't necessarily predict, like, how forward thinking, like, this had been planned for a really long time, like, all of Misery's life, basically.
And so, what's her dad's name? Do we remember? I don't remember.
Oh, no.
But Misery's dad, doing all of these things, putting all of these pieces in place, he's kind of been keeping tabs on both Misery and Serena as they've grown up.
Yeah.
Just to kind of study and see what a half-breed species would react like. And he's come to the conclusion that she doesn't shift.
Yeah. Because she still bleeds red blood. She eats human food. Like, she doesn't really have any sense. And Anna's the same way. Like, we see in the territory, she's asking, like, why can't I shift? Like, all of her little friends can shift who are full-blooded werewolves, and they're around the same age. Like, I think she's 6 or 7. And so it's really showing, like, they show very little werewolf presentation out front.
And then on top of this, we find out that Misery's dad knows that Misery and Lo are mates. And it was at this point where I was like, but they're not mates. Because Lo's monologue, if you read it, like it just kind of rips everything you thought away from you. I truly thought that Lo and her weren't mates in that moment, and I was very confused that he brought Lo along to come see him almost try to kill Misery just so that he could control Lo. But they are mates, and it's confirmed because of his reactions to how like her dad is trying to kill her. It gets really dramatic. It gets really scary and sad.
And like I think the whole, because I think I was confused as to why the dad was the, like why it would make sense. And I think like for me, what I got was this whole thing of the vampires are very few. They can't really reproduce a lot. And when they do, like they're just in numbers wise so much smaller than humans and werewolves. And they have managed to stay in power because of these relationships they've had with the humans, and also this kind of like rivalry between the humans and werewolves, like kind of adding fire to that. They've pitted them against each other so that they can't band together to attack the vampires, and have kind of played that field in a way. And so now the new government are coming in, being friendly with the humans, and then also finding that humans and werewolves can conceive and are a lot more similar than they think or are to vampires. Like it's damaging kind of everything he's built in a vampire society, and like he's thinking that for the livelihood of vampires, like these hybrids have to kind of be controlled and not let out, because that can cause more alliance between the humans and the werewolves, which could be bad for the vampires, which I actually bought. Like that makes like, and I think based off of everything we know, it makes it's a convincing argument for the dad to do that.
Right. The only thing that he got wrong though was that Serena and Anna can shift.
Yeah.
And so Serena kind of does, I don't know, they just have their friendship connection.
They made up a language.
Yeah.
And Serena basically says in her language like,
oh yeah, I forgot that.
Oh, I can shift. And then Misery uses that, and she basically is like, okay, if you're gonna kill me, can I say goodbye to my mate? She's talking to Lo, and she's like, basically the thing that Anna can't do right now, like let's say in 25 years she can do. And he's like, what the heck are you talking about? And he's like, oh.
And then he gets it.
And then we also then find out that, because there's one moment where I think you had the thing with Lo as a mate, I had this moment where I was like, oh my god, this would have been such a good twist, where Owen is bringing in Lowell for her father. So it's like Owen, her brother, Misery's brother, is kind of like betraying Misery. And I was like, oh no! Like I actually really believed he was betraying her. And I was like, and I guess like that was the thing, like I was like, I really felt some sibling connection, but I also felt like it was very distant in a way. And I think that is just how vampires are. But I was like, oh my god, like he's betraying her. Like it was like he was working for her brother, or for his father. But I was like, it doesn't really make sense. He was like overthrowing. Like I was just really confused. And you find out that like he and Owen and Lowell planned a whole thing to use this as an advantage to overthrow her father as well. So then a whole battle breaks out.
Yeah.
And another Aster.
And they capture her dad, and I think they kill him.
It's not really stated. Misery's just like, do whatever you want with him and don't tell me. And then she walks away. And since we're kind of from her POV, like we don't really know. And I'm assuming they kill him. But Misery's kind of now like with Serena, and like they're very happy, and like they're catching up.
And they go on their run.
And they're just really cute. But like Misery's also like not having a lot of contact with Lowell, and she's like, I know we're mates, but like last time we talked, like he was very happy about that. Like, do I still like, I don't have to live in the vampire or in the werewolf territory anymore. She goes into her room and she sees it's all packed up in boxes, and she's like, okay, I
guess he doesn't want me. So, and then they go talk, and I think he just kind of explains it as like, I wanted to protect you, as always. And then he's like, oh, well, I don't want you to move. I just have all your stuff in boxes because I'm gonna remake your room because you're a vampire and you can't see the sun. I love you.
And then she's like, oh, I love you too.
And then they just live happily ever after and they're happy.
And I think, like, so I think what was interesting for me is, like, I think, again, I was convinced that the father being the villain, but I was annoyed because personally for me, I like a villain to be someone who has a lot of face time. That's why I was like, Owen's betrayal would have been a lot more gut wrenching than the father's, because the father's in 2 scenes. Like, he's not someone who's really has a connection with Misery, and he's not someone who I think of when I think of the book. Like, I kind of forgot he existed, to be entirely honest. And so for that to be, that was a little disappointing. Like, I know they wanted the relationship with Owen and stuff like that. Like, I just think I think the twist with Mick was really good, because it was like someone, like, I just didn't see it coming. But, like, for the father to be spearheading it, I was like, it makes sense. Like, it logically makes sense, but emotionally, I was like, that payoff wasn't what I wanted it to be, I guess. And so it kind of, like, just made it hard to be, like, even, like, I'm like, we don't know if he died. Like, and I think that was, like, the book didn't necessarily end on a cliffhanger, but it definitely kind of ended in a way that there are a lot more to figure out, because one of Lowell's kind of like friends ended up finding Serena as like his mate.
Wait, I remember.
Yeah, like it was the last scene and he was like, oh, well, I'm like screwed. And it was kind of like this cliffhanger of like, how are they going to move forward? Like, I'm like, is there going to be a second book? I'm not really sure, because I could see it just definitely ending here. And Ali Hazelwood hasn't had like a trilogy. Like, she's very much standalones. But I think as an ending's concerned, like, I was a little disappointed and I was expecting more, because there's still, I think, a lot left that I have a couple questions of. It was like, okay, like, yeah, now we know hybrids, but like, is Anna safe? Like, just because her father, like, are the loyalists still not doing anything? Like, I think there was still a lot of things that weren't really like tied together.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that there could have been more wrapping up, but I also feel conflicted. There could have been more wrapping up, but I also like how the book ended. I feel like choosing the father as the main villain was pretty classic.
Yeah.
Because I liked everyone that we came across.
Yeah.
I am really sad about Mick. But wasn't the reason why he was working with the father was because he held his son captive. So it was kind of justifiable, and we kind of will probably see that even though his reasoning was justifiable, he'll still face his sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would rate it 7 out of 10.
Oh, I was like, out of 5?
It was amazing. It did make me cry. I feel like if a book makes me cry, it's automatically an 11 out of 10.
I don't like being cry. I think if a book makes me laugh and feel some type of way, then it's a 10 out of 10. I think for Ali Hazelwood, it's not my favorite book from her. I love the I think Love Hypothesis, like, to me, that's like a 9 out of 10. Like, I really like that book. I think for me, I probably rated like 6.5, 6 out of 10. Like, I think it was done, some elements were done really well. I kind of got bored. It's a slow moving book at the beginning for me. Like, I don't think a lot happens until kind of like
we get to Emery.
And like the second half. And so I really found it dragging on in some parts. Well, lighting issues, but just to wrap up, I think it was pretty good. I think it's a good kind of like little dip in the toe of that kind of genre. And yeah.
So if you enjoyed what we had to say and want to see more of our unhinged reviews, please like and subscribe. Comment below if you read the book, if you liked it, what were your thoughts on it. And thank you for watching us.
Yeah.
See you later.
Bye.